used to work the overnight shift at this 24-hour laundromat on the edge of town. It was the kind of job where you spent half the night trying not to fall asleep, and the other half wondering why the hell anyone was doing laundry at 3 in the morning. The place had this old hum that never stopped. Washers, dryers, vending machines. The flicker from the little TV bolted near the door. After a few weeks, you stopped noticing all of it. But there was this one guy who made me notice things again. I first saw him on a Tuesday night around 2 a.m. He walked in wearing this long grey coat, kind of wrinkled but clean, and he moved like someone who had been awake far too long. He didn't load anything into a washer. He didn't buy detergent. He just took a seat in the corner, hands on his knees, eyes fixed on the front door, like he was waiting for someone to burst through it. At first I figured he was homeless, maybe using the heat, but he didn't smell like anything, and he didn't nod off or twitch the way people do when they've been out on the street for too long. He just watched. Hours passed, and he didn't even blink. You know that feeling you get when someone's staring at something behind you instead of at you? That slow, creeping chill that climbs up your back. That's what it felt like every time I restocked detergent near his corner. He wasn't scared, and he wasn't calm either. He looked like someone concentrating on a single thought so intensely that if he looked away even once, something terrible would happen. The next night he was back. Same corner, same clothes, same posture. I let it go for 2 more nights before finally walking over and asking if he was okay. His head turned toward me with this slow, dragging movement, like he hadn't moved his neck in years. When he spoke, his voice sounded dry, the kind of dry that makes you swallow just listening to it. He said, "I can't go home." I asked why, and he said it even quieter, like the words were heavy. "There's something waiting outside for me." I laughed at first, like an idiot. I thought he meant someone was stalking him, or maybe he was having some kind of paranoid episode. But then he added, "It learned how to look like me. It stands outside my building and waits for me to come back." I kind of froze, because the way he said it didn't sound like he believed it. It sounded like he knew it. He told me he first noticed it a few months ago. He'd be getting home late, and he'd see this shape, his height, his silhouette, standing across the street under the lamppost, not moving, not speaking, just facing his building. He said it started small, just appearing every few days, and then it became every night. Then it started tapping on his apartment window, these slow, steady taps, exactly the way he knocked on doors. He said the worst part was hearing his own voice whispering through his mail slot at 4 in the morning, calling his name in a tone he had never used before. I didn't know how to respond. I told him I could call someone for him, maybe a friend or the non-emergency line, but he shook his head fast, almost violently. He said he had tried telling people, and no one believed him. When he tried recording it, there was never anything there in the video, just quiet apartments and empty streets. I asked how long he'd been staying at the laundromat. He said, long enough to know it's getting impatient. That was the moment I felt something settle in my stomach, heavy and cold. I didn't ask any more questions. I went back to my counter because the conversation felt like it pulled a curtain back, and I wasn't ready to see what was behind it. The next night, he didn't show up until around 3. When he walked in, he looked more exhausted than before. His skin had this pale, stretched look, and he kept glancing over his shoulder before he finally closed the door. He sat in his corner without saying a word. Around 4, I went into the security room to check the monitors. The laundromat had this small wall of screens showing every angle except the bathroom. One of the monitors showed the corner where he usually sat. Except on the screen, there were two of him. One sitting in the corner like always, and another sitting directly next to him, in the exact same pose. Same clothes, same slumped shoulders. I stared at the screen for a solid minute before leaning out the door to check the main floor. There was only one man sitting there, but on the monitor, both versions slowly turned their heads toward the camera at the same time. I backed into the room with my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. And that's when another screen flickered, then stabilized, showing the back hallway, and another identical version of him standing in the far end, facing the camera, completely motionless. Three of him, one real, two on cameras. I whispered his name, and on the monitor, all three turned their heads at me, even though I was 20 feet away behind a closed door. Then the worst thing happened. One of the versions on the monitors, the one in the hallway, stepped forward, not just on the screen. I heard the footsteps behind the wall, slow, dragging, heavy. The camera showed it walking toward the laundromat floor, and then I saw the shape pass right by the doorframe of the security room. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. Then I heard the real man scream. It wasn't a startled scream. It was this deep, broken sound like someone who had been scared for so long that the fear finally spilled over. I ran out just in time to see the thing standing in front of him, pulling itself out of the hallway shadows. It looked almost perfect. Same face, same clothes, but something was wrong with its mouth. It stretched too wide, like it had been practicing how to smile but never learned how humans actually did it. The real man whispered, "Please." I stayed away. I stayed away. The thing leaned closer, moved its mouth, and whispered something, and then lights flickered so violently I thought they would burst. When they stabilized, both of them were gone. The corner was empty. The front door was locked from the inside. I called the police, but they didn't find anything. No footprints, no forced entry, nothing on the cameras except static. I quit the same week. I used to work nights at this business hotel on the edge of the city. And honestly, I only took the job because the hours fit my schedule, and I thought nothing interesting ever happened there. Most of my shift was spent at the front desk, with a pot of burned coffee, answering the occasional call about Wi-Fi passwords or extra pillows. It was boring, which was kind of perfect for me. But then there was the service hallway. It ran behind the east wing, connecting a bunch of old maintenance closets, the laundry chute, and a few doors that were permanently locked. That whole wing had been closed years before I started. They said there had been water damage and structural issues, and it was cheaper to seal it off than renovate it. I never questioned it because, honestly, it wasn't part of my job. But one night, around 2 a.m, I heard the sound of a housekeeping cart rolling down that service hallway. You know that specific sound those carts make. Those rattling wheels, that soft slap of hanging towels hitting the sides, and the squeak they let out when someone turns them too sharply. Yeah, that sound. At first I thought maybe someone had gotten the wrong hallway. But when I walked over to check, the lights were off, and the air felt stale, like a place that hadn't been used in years. No cart, no housekeeper, nothing. I mentioned it to the morning manager, and he gave me this look I still don't know how to describe. It wasn't fear exactly, but it wasn't confusion either. It was like he expected it. Later that afternoon, before I clocked out, he slid a laminated sheet across the counter. It was a list of room numbers printed in bold red. He said, "If you hear anything near these rooms, you ignore it, and you do not unlock any of these doors under any circumstances." I laughed because it sounded like something from a movie, but he wasn't joking. He didn't even blink. I asked him why the doors were listed, if the whole wing was sealed anyway. He just said, "Not everything back there stayed sealed." That stuck with me. It stayed in my head the same way a bad smell sticks in your clothes. For a few nights, things were quiet. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the cart. But then, around 3:15 a.m. on a Thursday, the sound started again. This time it was louder, like someone was pushing the cart faster, letting it bump against the walls. I walked to the hallway entrance and stopped just before the motion sensor lights turned on. I didn't want whatever was in there to think I was coming toward it. Instead, I just listened, holding my breath. The rattling kept moving, and it sounded like it was getting closer to the numbered doors on the list. Something about that made my entire body tense. The sound stopped suddenly. No fading, no slowing. Just silence that felt too thick. I stepped back, went to the front desk, and kept telling myself I wasn't going to go check. But curiosity is a stupid thing. By 4:30, I grabbed my flashlight and walked back to the hallway again. The cart was sitting there, not halfway down the hall, not off to the side. It was parked right in front of one of the forbidden rooms, room 237. The door looked old, older than the rest of the building, and the paint around the frame was cracked like something had swelled beneath it. The cart didn't look like our carts either. Ours were plastic, beige, with little drawers that never closed properly. This one was metal, old, and polished enough that it caught reflections even in the dim light, and the towels stacked on top of it. Those were folded in a style I hadn't seen since I was a kid, when my grandmother used to work in a hotel in the 90s. The corners were tucked in tight, and each towel had this pressed line running perfectly across the middle. I touched one without thinking. It was warm, not dryer warm, more like body warm. I pulled my hand back so fast I hit my wrist on the cart's edge. I kept whispering, "No, no, no," because that warmth felt wrong in a way that went straight through my bones. I should have turned around and walked away. I should have clocked out, gone home, quit the next morning. But instead, I leaned closer to the door to listen. I don't know why. I guess I wanted proof that I wasn't losing my mind. And that's when something inside started knocking. It wasn't a random rhythm. It wasn't like someone trapped or panicking. It was slow, timed, measured. At first it matched the pace of my heartbeat. Then it slowed down until each knock landed exactly when I exhaled. It was knocking in sync with my breathing. I stepped back and held my breath to see if it would stop. It did. I inhaled sharply without meaning to, and the next knock hit the wood, right when I finished the breath. That broke something in me. I turned to run, but after 2 steps I heard the cart move. Not roll, shift, like something behind the door had placed its hand on it. Then the handle of the forbidden door twitched. Not a full turn, just a twitch. I stumbled backward so fast I hit the wall. I didn't want to scream, but the sound crawled up my throat anyway. When I looked back, the cart had moved a few inches away from the door, like it had been nudged. The knocking changed. It wasn't slow anymore. It wasn't gentle. It hit the door with a force that showed actual intention, like something was trying to match the sound of my heartbeat again, except this time it sounded irritated. That snapped me out of whatever frozen state I was in. I ran, and I didn't stop running until I got back to the front desk. I locked every door within reach. I sat there with my hands shaking so badly I couldn't hold the radio. The knocking didn't follow me, but I kept hearing faint creaks, as if the cart was being moved back into place. When the morning staff arrived, the hallway was empty. No cart, no towels, no signs of anything being disturbed. When the manager came in, he took one look at my face and sighed like he already knew what I'd seen. He didn't ask for details. He only said, "That's why we don't open those doors. Whatever used to work back there, it still thinks it has a shift to finish." I quit 2 weeks later. But sometimes, when I wake up at night, I swear I hear that same slow rattling sound coming from somewhere outside my apartment. And every time I breathe in, I can almost hear a faint knock following the rhythm.